Hi, I'm Andy Stanley, and on today's broadcast, I'm going to explain the number one reason why most romantic relationships fail. This one insight will greatly increase your chances of becoming someone worth finding and finding someone worth your time. So you better stick around. Now, from the very outset, I've said that part of the reason I wanted to do this series was to say some things that I thought everybody knew. Sometimes common sense isn't so common, and when we're in love, we lose our minds, and that's part of being in love is losing your minds. And so we wanted to pause in this series and just sort of state the obvious, because sometimes the obvious isn't so obvious. And so as we wrap up this series, what I want to do is I want to take you to one central idea, and then at the end of the message, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of applications. I mean, like a lot. Like we're dumping the kitchen sink into this final message as we'd have this one more opportunity to say to single people, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Marriage is awesome. Marriage can be incredible. You never hear about the great marriages because they're boring and when you're on the outside looking in, but when you're on the inside, it's awesome. We want you to have an awesome, boring marriage. Drama-free, full of love and secrets and things you don't tell people about because it's so awesome, okay? And the great news is this. If you're single and you've never been married, you get to get this right the first time. So today, I'm going to give you all the rest of the secrets. We've been sort of giving a few secrets at a time. Today, we're dumping all the secrets on you. Now, single people, here's something you don't know. Every single Saturday in this city, and every single Saturday in every city in this country, and every single Saturday in countries all over the world, single people get all dressed up. The bride puts on a white dress or an almost white dress, and she looks as beautiful as she's ever looked. And the man looks way more handsome than he actually is, and he puts on a tux. And they have spent thousands of dollars and weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months preparing for this day. And they come together and they stand at an altar in this thing we call a wedding, and they hold hands, they exchange rings, and then somebody like me or a pastor says, repeat after me, and they take vows. And every single Saturday in this city and in cities all over the country, single people make promises that they can't keep. Now, they mean well, they're not lying. Most of the time, they're not like overtly lying. It's just that they make promises they are not prepared to keep. And they mean well. And then after they're married, a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 3 or 4 months or 6 months, they realize, you know what, I know this is what I said, but this is hard. And all of a sudden they begin to realize, I really did mean it. I meant it when I said it. And then they start holding each other accountable, like, but you said and you promised. And the next thing you know, it's commitment wars, but you committed. And the reason is, and single people, I'm telling you, the married people around you, they didn't discover this till after they were married, so I'm giving you a big heads up. People get married and make promises they can't keep and make vows they can't fulfill. And they want to, and they try, but they just aren't prepared to do it. And the reason they're not prepared is that they overlooked a principle that all of us understand in every other realm of life, but when it comes to relationships, we don't think this is true. And here's the principle. Promises are no substitute for preparation. Promises are no substitute for preparation. If you've ever entered a long-distance race or you're a long-distance runner, you know all about this. It's one thing to sign up for the race. It's another thing to prepare for it. And if you're not prepared, it's a waste of time to promise that you'll finish. Because what determines whether or not you finish a long-distance race is not the promise. It's not even your signature. It's whether or not you've prepared. Well, see, you're like, well, duh, everybody understands that. But I'm telling you, when it comes to relationships, people think, I can promise my way past my lack of preparation. Let me put it this way. Just because you say I do doesn't make you able. Just because you say I do doesn't make you capable. It only makes you accountable. And when you're accountable for something you're not capable of doing, you become miserable, okay? And there are a lot of people who are locked in marriages where they're miserable because they know what they're accountable for and they just aren't able to pull it off. It's kind of like Ron White. I don't know if you heard Ron White tell a story about when he was arrested for being in public drunkenness. Have you heard this story? And and when he tells the story, he says, I had the right to remain silent, I did not have the ability to do so, okay? And I'm telling you, this is what happens every single Saturday. It'll catch on later. Every single Saturday, people look at each other and they make a promise and they really mean it. They just don't have the ability to pull it off. And you need to understand, a lack of preparation cannot be trumped by a promise. Promises don't matter a bit if a person hasn't prepared. And here's the great news for you. Between now and the time you get married, you get to prepare. You've got time. Now, the problem is, and this is the part I don't know how to communicate very well, you will never be less motivated than now to deal with this. People don't get motivated to deal with these things until they're in a bad marriage, and they're really motivated. They spend a lot of money and a lot of time, and in some cases, it's just too late. So you're not going to be that motivated, but now's the time because now you have the time to prepare. And so if you just get one thing out of this message, here's what I want you to hear me say. I want you to prepare to commit. I want you to prepare to commit. I want you to prepare to commit so that when you make a commitment, when you make a promise, when you take a vow, you will be in a position to where you will be able to fulfill your promise. And here's what will happen. If you make a decision to prepare to commit and you devote yourself to that, you will be highly unlikely to marry somebody who has not prepared to commit themselves, because your life will be moving in such a specific direction. Anyone whose life is not moving in that same direction will be in such conflict with your values and conflict with your way of life that you won't be interested, and perhaps they won't be interested in you either. Now, the interesting thing is, you probably couldn't argue with that. I mean, when you think about running, when you think about work, when you think about the SAT, when you think about swimming, there's so many arenas where you realize, a promise is worthless. It's preparation that makes the difference. And you probably wouldn't argue with me that this is probably true relationally. But the interesting thing is this. In the Old Testament, the wisest man who ever lived, Solomon, speaks directly into this dynamic. And I want to look at two verses. We're just going to look at two verses. I want to sort of tease these things out a little bit. So maybe you could go back, memorize one of these verses or both of these, and let these sort of be a pillar that kind of holds this whole thing together for you as you think about the importance of committing not to a person, but committing to the process of being in a position to be able to keep your commitments. Okay, here's the first verse. Here's what he says. He uses this word prudent. Let me define this for you before I read the verse. We don't use this terminology very much. A prudent person in the Old Testament, the Hebrew word that's translated prudent, a prudent person is a person that understands that all of life is connected. A prudent person understands that what happened yesterday impacts tomorrow. A prudent person is a person that understands that what I'm doing today, as we talked about in the first week, will eventually become my past, and it will show up in my future. The prudent person understands that if you're going in this direction, it's a pretty good idea of where you're going to end up. So the prudent person understands that all of life is connected. So here's what Solomon says. The wisdom of the prudent, the future-oriented person, is to give thought to their, say this word with me, ways. Let me tell you what ways are. Ways are behaviors. Ways are patterns. Ways are habits. Ways are trends. Ways are what makes us predictable. Ways are why your parents know what you're going to do before you do it. They know what you're going to say before you say it. Ways are why you can predict your parents' response to a question even before you ask it. Everybody has ways, habits, patterns, paths. Here's what he's saying. This is staggering. The wise person, the person that's prudent, they give thought to their ways. In other words, they pay attention to how they do things, how they manage things, because the prudent person knows the best indicator of my future behavior is my what? My past behavior. That's right. If I want to know where I'm actually going to be, all I have to do is look back to see where I've been and what direction I'm headed in. So the prudent person pays attention not to commitments and promises, because those don't indicate anything. They pay attention to their paths. But the folly or the stupidity, the folly of fools is deception. Now, that in and of itself doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you contrast this in this little proverb, and that's what proverbs are, there's generally two statements that contrast and to make one simple point. Here's his point, that whereas the prudent person is constantly examining and evaluating their ways, their patterns, their habits, their behaviors, their trends, their flow of their life, The fool, on the other hand, doesn't pay attention to those things. The fool, on the other hand, thinks, you know what, regardless of how my life has usually gone, regardless of how I've usually responded, regardless of my current habits, somehow I think I'm going to end up in a place that nothing I'm currently doing points me in that direction. That somehow good things are going to magically happen. I don't know how, I don't know why. But there's no point in trying to evaluate where I'm going to be based on what I'm currently doing. The prudent person says, no, it's all about your ways, your habits, your behaviors, your trends. Here's the second way he says it. This is even more to the point. The simple believe anything. Now, single people, I just got to warn you. When you fall in love, you'll believe anything. Because you and your boyfriend, girlfriend, or fiance, you have a song. We have a song. And your parents are going, yeah, but does he have a job? And you're going, he doesn't need a job. We have a song. And the other day, I went to the mall, and I parked right beside him. There was an empty parking spot right beside him. Really. And then he bought me this little puppy, this little dog. And you know what? On the way home, we passed his house, and they had the same dog. It's like, oh my gosh, we'll get married now. I mean, see what happens when we get engaged, we fall in love. Part of it is we lose our mind. And when you lose your mind in love, you know what? You will believe anything. So the guy comes to her and says, well, you know, I know this is wrong with me, and this is wrong with me, and this is wrong with me. I don't have this, and I haven't done this, and I haven't paid any attention to it. But if you'll marry me, I'll change. Now listen to what Solomon contrasts that with. The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. Say this word with me. Do you know why that's an important word? Because steps, when you look at a person's steps, you can tell where they're going. See, words are meaningless. Promises are meaningless. Commitments are almost meaningless. It's the past that's the best indicator of where a person is headed and where they will probably end up. That's true of who you date, and that's true of who you are. You can summarize it this way with this statement. That paths people choose trump the commitments they make. The paths people choose trump the commitments they make. When you look at your life, when you examine the life of the people you're dating, the question is not where are they and not what have they promised. The question is where have they been and where are they headed. Last little pithy statement, then we're going to move on, is this. Same idea. The past is a better indicator than a promise. The past is a better indicator than a promise. So here's all I'm saying. If you're committed to becoming the person you're looking for is looking for, if you're committed to becoming the kind of person that would attract the person you hope to attract, if you're committed to this process, then here's what I want you to commit to. I want you to commit now to becoming someone who can keep their commitments later. I want you to commit now, not to a person, not to a relationship, not to a marriage. I want you to commit now to becoming someone who can keep their commitments later. This is the goal. This is what you should be working on, so that when you say I do, you really can do, you know? So here's what I want to do in our remaining few minutes. I want to go through a list. I'm going to go through these pretty quick. The first one will take a little longer than the rest, but I'm going to hit these quick. I want to give you some very, very, very specific single people assignments as you think about what you need to be in the process of doing now, committing to now, so that when you make a commitment later, you'll actually be able to keep your promise. And the first one is the most difficult, and here's the first one. You need to address your unresolved childhood issues. Now, that's a big category. That's a series of messages, isn't it? Let me give you a quote from some professionals that kind of drill down on this. This is pretty powerful. This is what they say. If you attempt to build intimacy with a person, like get married someday, if you attempt to build intimacy with a person before you've done the hard work of becoming a whole and healthy person, every relationship will be an attempt to complete the hole in your heart. Here's what they're saying. If you attempt to move toward intimacy in dating, not just physical intimacy, but like you're the one for me, I'm the one for you, I'm giving myself to you passionately, fully, fearlessly, all those things we've talked about. If you attempt intimacy without first becoming a whole and healthy person, all of your relationships will feel like they have a hole in them. Now, single people, I'm telling you, you'll never be less motivated. You'll never have more time. The number one thing you can do to prepare for to get to the place where you can say yes and mean it is to become whole and healthy. And for most of you, that means turning around and facing and addressing issues from your childhood. Now, I'm going to show you a diagram that I've never shown single people before. I've only shown married people. And when I've shown married people this diagram, I realize when I'm drawing it for them, it's mostly too late. And I thought to myself, why am I showing married people this? It's too late. I should show single people this. So this was worth the price of admission right here. Here's what I draw for married people. I draw this. I say, okay, here's you, and here's your parent or your parents. You know, she was ran off, or he ran off, or you know they weren't around, or he wouldn't come to your ball games, or he drank too much, or you know whatever. And now here you are as a single person, and you got all this drama with your parents. You're either angry or you don't care, and you say, no, I don't have any drama. I send her a Mother's Day card. That's it. Well, that's it. We just don't talk. Okay, well, see, if you don't talk with your living parents, hello, okay? So most single people don't think they have, but if you have any of this, this is a heads up, okay? In fact, when I show you this next slide, it's going to take every ounce of self-control on the behalf of some married people not to do this. Okay, so married people, just get ready. None of this. You just look straight ahead, make eye contact, and smile, okay? Because I'm telling you, single people, this is huge. Here's what happens if you have any drama, if you have any leftover angst with mama or daddy, when you get married, here's what happens. Your spouse goes right there, and they catch it. And here's the bad thing. They don't know why you're so upset, and you don't know why they don't shape up. And you cannot win this. You cannot win. This is dead in the water. Nobody wins. And if you're the spouse, you're going, all I said was I'd like to be a few minutes early, and whoa, all I said was, all I said, I don't understand why he overreacts, why she overreacts. And you're over here going, I don't understand it either, but I'm not going to tell him. Then you're just going to keep shoveling in his or shoveling in her direction. And I'm telling you, when you're this person, you can't see this in the mirror. When this dynamic happens in a marriage, these couples, if they're smart, they go to counseling. And months and months and months and months and months later, and thousands of dollars later, if they're lucky, this person goes, oh, so I'm still mad at my mama. And this person goes, yes. And they don't say out loud, and I've been trying to tell you, you can't say that out loud, okay? Now, single people, I'm telling you, this is enormous. If you come from a home that there's there was divorce in your home, you probably got some of this. If dad was there but wasn't there, you got some of this. If mom was kind, you've got some of this. It's just normal. It's natural. There's nothing wrong with you, but you don't want to drag that into your next relationship. That's the first one. The rest will go a lot quicker. Ladies, here's what you need to do to get ready. Don't dress like a commodity, and don't put up with being treated like one. This goes back to the second week. Don't dress like a commodity, and don't put up with being treated like one. Now, ladies, listen to me. If in your dating, you get in the habit of being treated like a commodity, guess what's going to happen when you're married? Your husband's going to do the same thing. If he dated you like a commodity, he's going to treat you like a commodity. You should have no tolerance for being treated like a commodity. None at all. None at all. And this may go back to step one that we just went through, but you need to deal with this. And ladies, just a little tip from the world of fishing. Do you know how a fisherman determines what to bait his hook with? What he's fishing for. That's pretty deep. Let me go over that again. Do you know what a fisherman determines what to bait his hook with? It depends on what he's fishing for. Ladies, if you fish with your body, you're going to catch body snatchers every single time. Okay? I'm just telling you. Men, here's your memorize part 2 of this series. That's all you got to do, okay? You just go back to bar. Okay, next thing I want to tell you to get ready to be happily married is this. You need to get out of debt. Now, this is ginormous. This is huge. This is so big now. In some of our premarital counseling situations, we tell people we're not going to recommend you get married till you get out of debt. Now, here's why. You may not believe this. Just trust me. You can get out of debt a lot quicker as a single person than a married person. In fact, all the married people that believe me, just say amen. There you go. You can get out of debt a lot quicker as a single person as a married person. And if you're a single person who has so poorly managed your finances that you have a lot of debt, when you get married, that's a path, that's a behavior, that's a trend, that's a habit that you're carrying into marriage. And you know what, ladies? If he loves you, he'll move in with mama to get out of debt in order to marry you. He should do that if he loves you. So, get out of debt. Along with that, okay, broader ideas is break your bad habits. Now, let me tell you why I put this one in here. Single people. Marriage was not designed to solve any problems. That's not what it is. It doesn't solve any problems. In marriage, the great things get better and the bad things get worse generally. It doesn't solve any problems. So if you have a bad habit now, then you're going to have a bad habit and be married. That's all that's going to happen. If you drink too much now, you drink too much then. You got a prescription addiction thing, it's just going to get worse, except somebody's going to know. You got a gambling thing now, it's just going to be worse. You got a porn thing now, it's just going to be worse. You got a debt thing, shopping thing, can't stay out of debt thing, it's just going to be worse. To prepare to be able to look at somebody and say this, I'm going to honor and cherish you. You're going to be the priority of my life. I'm never going to do anything to hurt you or to harm this relationship. Then break your bad habits now. And you already know what they are. Okay, men, here's what you need to do. Memorize part 2 of this series, okay? Because ladies, they don't listen. So I thought I'd have to say it twice. Okay. All right. Next one, I'm going to hit these quick. When you're dating, postpone the physical of your dating relationships ALAP, as long as possible, okay? And when I physical, I'm not talking about sex. I'm just talking about everything else, okay? Just postpone the physical. And let me tell you, I've been doing this a long time. I've never heard anyone say to me, you know, I think our relationship would have been better and healthier if we'd gotten physical faster. Never heard that. But I can't even begin to tell you how many times people have said, you know what, we got physical quick. I mean, first date, second date, third date, I spent the night, and next thing, because you know this, the physical part of a relationship, it's a fog, it's a mist. Women, you want to know he's coming back. You want to know he's coming back. And he's over there going, that wasn't quite what I thought it would be. That wasn't quite what I thought it would be. And then you're in trouble. So just postpone the physical. And ladies, if some guy ditches you because 3 or 4 dates in, you're not going to let him come in and roll around on the couch. You just say, hey, you know, you need a mama and a counselor, okay? I'm not that person. It's okay. And guys, if you just feel like it's just come on, just remember, you're not the first guy. So come on. I'm just saying, you're looking for the one, not everyone. And on this series, I said this isn't for people who are just players. This is for people who see dating as a means to an incredible end. Along these same lines, and I almost decided not to do this one, is, go to the next one if we could, is avoid living together. Now, again, don't take my word for it. You know, chalk me up as the religious guy. What would you expect the preacher to say? Look at the research yourself. There is no evidence at all, and a lot of research has been done on this. There is no evidence at all that living together prepares anyone for marriage. The opposite is true. The opposite is true. Check it out yourself. Couples who live together have a far higher chance of divorce. An individual that has lived with 2 or 3 people, it is almost a 0 possibility for them, according to the statistics, almost 0 chance that your first marriage will last. Now, I understand this about statistics. They're only important if they support what you're currently doing. See there? We're right. No one ever makes relationship decisions based on statistics because you think you're going to be the exception. But I just got to tell you because I love you. This is not a path to happily ever after. But this is a big deal. To become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for, to become a person that can actually say yes and mean it, you need to be very, very involved in your local church. And let me tell you why this is so huge, okay? Whenever I meet couples, I say, young couples, I say, where did you meet? How did you meet? I ask that question all the time. I love it. I've heard this so many times. You know what happens? They come to this church, they come to one of our churches or one of our strategic partners all over the country, and they start volunteering. And they're volunteering with middle schoolers, And one afternoon, they're in middle school, and they look over and think, well, now he doesn't look like a middle schooler. And they meet somebody whose flow is in the same direction. They meet somebody whose path is in the same direction. You need to be involved in a great local church, and you need to serve. Because in serving, and it's not because we need people to come volunteer, it's because in an environment like this, and in an environment like the ones we create, you are more likely to find the people whose lives, whose lifestyles, whose flow, whose patterns, whose behaviors, whose ways, whose paths are in sync with the ones that you're trying to establish. Sandra's mom told her early on when she was in college, she said, if you go to the right places, chances are you'll meet the right people. And it's true. Sandra and I met in a Bible study. I know that's kind of geeky for the preacher. What would you expect the preacher to meet the preacher's wife in a Bible study? But you know what? Neither one of us were looking. We were just kind of doing the things that supported the decisions that we had made as individuals. Because at the end of the day, here's singles, listen, and then I'm done. You get to do this right. No matter what you've done wrong, and no matter what is in your past, and no matter how you may have messed up in the past, going forward, you get to get it right. You get to make decisions now that will enable you to stand at an altar and say, I do, and be able to I do. To say I will and to be able to actually I will. And you'll be looking at somebody who has done the difficult work of becoming a whole person. And they will be able to give a whole person to you, and you'll be able to give a whole person to them. Not because you made a promise, not because you made a commitment, but because you made a commitment to the process of becoming someone worth pursuing, worth winning, and worth loving. And it's my heart's desire that you'll do whatever you have to do between now and then to become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. And if you do that, that's a win for you. That's a win for your family. That's a win for this generation. It's a win for the kingdom of God. So I don't know where this lands with you. I don't know what feels like the next step is for you, but I hope you'll take it. I hope you'll go to that website, listen to those messages. I hope that God will stir stuff up in you and you'll deal with it. You'll change your habits. You'll change your patterns, and that you'll fall in love someday, not with just the right person, but the right person who became the right person because of the decisions they made in preparation for spending the rest of their life with you.
Thanks so much for watching Your Move with Andy Stanley. If you like today's message and are interested in learning